presidential decree on publishing the new constitution in the official gazette to be put into effect on February 27, 2012. Russia and China welcomed the referendum on the new draft constitution and affirmed that it is a step towards realizing reform and democracy. The armed terrorist groups target military and educational institutions and homes. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our news for today. President Bashar al-Assad today issued decree number 94 of 2012 on publishing the constitution of the Syrian Arab Republic, approved by the people on the recent referendum and the official gazette. The new constitution comes into effect on February 27, 2012. The Ministry of the Interior yesterday announced the results of the referendum on the new draft constitution in Syria. It was approved by more than 89.4% of the eligible voters. The Minister General Mohammed Bashar said those who cast their votes were 8,376,447, representing 57.4% out of 14,589,954 eligible voters. Those who disapproved were 753,208, representing 9% of the voters. The number of cancelled votes was 132,920, representing 1.6% of the total. The minister pointed out that there were 14,185,000 centers covering all cities, areas, neighborhoods, villages, ministries, institutions, factories, hospitals, and border crossing points. Russian Prime Minister Vladimir Putin asserted that no one should be allowed to repeat the Libyan scenario in Syria. In an article published today, he added that all the efforts exerted by the international community should be mobilized to find a solution in Syria. He pointed out that violence from whatever source should be stopped, and national dialogue should start without any precondition or any foreign interference. He called for respecting Syrian sovereignty. China has expressed hope that the referendum and the new constitution would help open political dialogue. The Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman Hong Li said China hopes all concerned parties in Syria would work together and exert coordinated efforts for stopping violence. He also called on the international community to fully respect Syria's sovereignty, independence, and unity. He described U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton's criticism of China's stand towards Syria as totally unacceptable. Syria's delegation to the Human Rights Council withdrew from the council session today, describing the discussions as fruitless and the session as illegal. Syria's permanent representative to the Council in Geneva, Faisal Hamwi, explained the step, saying that the Council insisted on breaching its procedural rules and turning into a tool in the hands of some countries. He added that the real objective of the session was to ignite terrorism and prolong the duration of the crisis in Syria through the message of support the session would convey to the armed groups. Al-Hamwi affirmed that the concept of humanitarian protection and intervention was being flagrantly manipulated in service of political objectives. A few days after the conclusion of the Tunisian conference held by those who should be rather called the enemies of Syria, campaigns to target the livelihood, freedom, and stability of the Syrian people continued as the EU countries, particularly the states of old colonialism, persist in their assault against Syria, issuing decisions that impose new measures on the Syrians who yesterday went to the polls to cast their votes in the referendum on the new constitution, thus sending a message to the world that all conspiracies aimed at dealing a blow to Syria and tearing it apart will be doomed to failure.
The EU measures declared in the Belgian capital Brussels included even the Syrian Ministries of Health and Agriculture, in a new proof that belies those states which are dreaming of recovering their black history and yet allege keenness on the Syrian people's freedom, dignity and livelihood. All the reports confirm that the sanctions target the Syrian people and their steadfastness and have their impact on the smallest details of their life and social services. The EU foreign ministers tried to look as if they were keen on the Syrians' interests by going back on their decision to resort to the option of no-fly zone that prevents travel from Syria. However, the fact of the matter, as European diplomats later revealed in statements published by the French news agency today, that this step is taken for the only reason of avoiding any hindrance of the travel of foreign nationals from Syrian territories. The EU countries, which claim to be advocates of freedom and democracy, do not even hesitate to impose sanctions on news media, a measure that runs completely contrary to the right of opinion and expression which they continue to call for. The unjustifiably escalating political and media campaign against Syria, which targets all Syrians, offers a new evidence that the parties of the conspiracy have lost their senses as the Syrian people continue to foil all the schemes they hatch and have decided to make their own future and build a new Syria.
In Homs, an armed terrorist group targeted yesterday morning the military educational installations complex in the city, firing mortar shells, killing 2 of the occupants and injuring 12 others. In Tel Shab area in Daraa countryside, border guard personnel foiled an infiltration attempt by an armed terrorist group coming from Jordan. The border guard personnel clashed with the terrorist group, killing 5 terrorists and wounding 2 others as the rest fled to the Jordanian territories. Authorities seized in Busra al-Harir town in Daraa countryside a warehouse that includes explosive devices said to be detonated by armed terrorist groups to attack law enforcement personnel and terrorize citizens. Over 40 explosive devices weighing from 5 kilograms to 20 kilograms were seized. Authorities seized in Al-Hasaka province 2 cars loaded with various weapons, including 106 rifles, machine guns and 3 RPG launchers, 2 sniper rifles and large amounts of ammunition coming from Iraq. Following a fire exchange, the authorities managed to seize the 2 cars and arrest the people riding them. Competent authorities seized another car loaded with 26 rifles coming from Turkey. With this, we conclude our news bulletin for today. For more information about Syria and the world, you can visit our website in English, syriaonline.sy. Up next, the latest business and market news with Hirado after a short break.
Good afternoon. The People's Assembly held its 3rd session today under the chairmanship of House Speaker Dr. Mahmoud Al-Abrash. Assembly members stressed that the new constitution represents an important step in the reform process as it reflects the people's aspirations for independence and sovereignty. The Assembly referred a number of legislative decrees to the concerned bodies to be implemented. Prime Minister Dr. Adel Safar said that the results of the referendum and the new constitution of the Syrian Arab Republic and the heavy turnout clearly expressed the citizens' support for the reform process led by President Bashar al-Assad. In a cabinet meeting today, the Prime Minister added that the new constitution is a quantum leap that reinforces the principle of the people's participation and the political pluralism in the country. It is also an achievement that depicts Syria's bright future and its stability. After discussing the issues and topics on the agenda, the Cabinet approved the proposal by the Minister of Electricity and the recommendation of the Economic Committee on a draft resolution that includes a system of granting licenses and permits for the activities of electricity. The General Establishment for Communication reduced by 42% the tariff of the broadband internet, the ADSL, for its subscribers, according to the speed chip, starting from the 1st of March. Director of the Department of Commerce in the establishment, Engineer Nuruddin al-Sabbagh, said that the financial effect of this amendment on all subscribers was taken into consideration, including the hired circuits and those which are used by economic activities. Mr. al-Sabbagh added that this reduction coincides with the start of the project of Data and Internet Exchange, BDN2, which is carried out by the establishment and which would achieve a qualitative leap in providing broadband gates and in the prices of the Internet service. Mr. al-Sabbagh pointed out that the establishment plans to install 100,000 broadband gates this year. Sources in the insurance sector said that the local insurance companies signed new insurance agreements with Malaysian, Indian and Russian companies in the beginning of the year, stressing that retail agreements with the European side and the European Arab companies have not stopped yet. The sources expected that the Arab companies may stop all the transactions with the local market due to the sanctions, although there is no confirmed notifications reaching the local insurance companies. The Syrian exports maintained almost the same level in spite of all the circumstances and according to estimated data issued by the Development and Promotion Authority of the Syrian exports. The Syrian exports to some countries improved in 2011 by up to 4%. The Director General of the authority, Hussam al-Youssef, said that these sanctions have positive aspects as the impact of the sanctions receded on the Syrian exports in limited points, which are the transfer of funds as a result of trade, shipping and insurance, where most of the transport companies refrain from coming to Syria, which increases the costs in addition to the difficulty of obtaining visa to other countries. However, the positive aspects were the low exchange rates of the Syrian pound against the foreign for the exporters, which led to the devaluation of the Syrian goods in the global markets. Minister of Irrigation Dr. George Somi said that the damage caused to the ministry's water facilities and machinery as a result of the acts of sabotage carried out by the armed terrorist groups has amounted to more than £1,600,000,000 Syrian pounds. In a press conference, Minister Somi said that the attacks that took place in Hama Governorate included attacks on the pumping stations in Al-Ghab area, which made it no longer possible to fill the dams in the area, adding that the terrorist armed groups prevented the completion of execution of a number of dam projects. Minister of Irrigation pointed out that the armed terrorist groups prevented the staff at the Directorate of Water Resources in Idlib from reaching the places of their work, which led to the inability to continue the maintenance of irrigation systems in the Governorate, and that was also what happened in Daraa and Homs. Brent crude futures continue retreating in the Asian trading today, falling below the level of $124 a barrel after a strong rise recently, which threatened to damage the global economy, but the concerns about supplies from the Middle East help reducing dropping prices. European stocks stabilized today on expectations that the second round of the long-term refinancing process of the European Central Bank may reduce pressures on the common balance sheets of the banks. Whereas the Japanese stocks recorded the highest close in 7 months as investors are evaluating the impact of Elbida Memory Company at a protecting request from the creditors of the chips sector and bought some stocks they had sold earlier. Prices edged up 0.3% today, gaining in line with other major assets on hopes of the ECB loan offer and lending some extra support with the weaker US dollar against the euro. Spot gold reached $1,771.96 US dollars an ounce after 2 sessions of straight losses. The euro rose sharply today, approaching the highest level in about 3 months against the US dollar before the European Central Bank pumped money into the banking system, which may enhance the risk appetite and the common currency in the short term. The euro also rose against the Japanese yen, but it is still much less than its highest levels in 4 months. The yen moved away from its lowest level in 9 months against the US dollar due to more purchases by the Japanese exporters at the end of the month. That was our economic bulletin for today. Thank you for watching. Until tomorrow, all the best and goodbye.